All right, now I promised to show you something called layer masks here in Photoshop, and this is where Photoshop does start to get a little bit more advanced, not like mega advanced, but I would say more in the intermediate range, I will say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open up another project file. I went and closed out of my Buddha. We're done with him. So I'm going to double click on my gray background there, of course, and into the project files, and I'm looking for a file called trucks.psd. Go ahead and pop that file open. Here we are, 3 toy trucks that I photographed against a fairly white background, although you can see there's a lot of drop shadow in there, again from the lighting and the flash and so on. Now, what I want to try and do is I want to try and essentially isolate just the blue truck here on the right-hand side and get rid of the other 2 trucks, the yellow truck and the red truck. And of course, I want to do so using this thing called a layer mask. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to get started with layer masks, initiating a layer mask, and of course working with them. I think what I'll do here is I'll start you off with the simplest method, and then we'll perhaps get a little bit more involved as we go along here. So I have my layers palette open on the right hand side, and of course inside the layers palette I see my background layer, so I know that I have a flattened image. What I'm going to do is I'm going to convert my background layer into a regular old Photoshop layer by double clicking on them, and then I'll just hit enter on my keyboard, or you can click on OK. So we now have layer 0. You can rename that to blue truck if you want, doesn't really matter. And then the next thing that I'll do is with layer 0 selected all the way down at the bottom of my layers palette, I'll click on this guy here, add layer mask. Go ahead and click on that guy. Now, something kind of weird happens here. We have the original layer thumbnail where I can see the toy trucks there. And then we have a new thumbnail. This is our layer mask thumbnail. And the chain link that connects the 2 together suggests that both these thumbnails are linked. So the image and the layer mask are going to be connected, at least initially. All right, now that I've done that, what do I do next? Well, check this out. I'm going to go back to my brush tool. This is very similar, by the way, to working with the quick mask mode. So I'm back on my brush tool. And remember that rhyme I gave you not too long ago? Black conceals and white reveals. So make sure you have black as your foreground color. I had to hit the X key there. And then you may need to increase or decrease your brush size. I'm at about this size here, and all I'm going to do is start painting inside my image. In fact, I'm going to paint all the way around the outside of this toy truck, this blue toy truck. That's the guy that I want to keep, remember. So essentially what I'm going to do is wipe out everything else, right? And because black conceals, what I'm doing here is it looks like I'm erasing the image, doesn't it? And of course I can see the checkerboard pattern showing through, indicating transparency, right? Indicating that there's nothing there. There's no pixels there at all. Well, what's interesting to note is I'm not actually deleting any pixels. What I'm doing is I'm masking away pixels. If I look back over inside my layers palette on that thumbnail there, that layer mask thumbnail, the black pixels there are indicating where my transparency resides inside my main image window, or in other words, where the masked areas reside inside my image. Now, you know what's really cool here is if I switch over now to white, don't forget that white reveals, and I start painting, I can actually paint in my image, the areas of the image that I had erased away. Well, again, I hadn't erased them, I merely masked them. So once again, this is one of our non-destructive methods for working inside Photoshop. You know, alternatively, what I could have done is I could have double-clicked on my background layer, converted them to a regular old Photoshop layer. I could have grabbed my eraser tool inside the toolbox and just gone at it and erased away my image just like this, right? And I would have gotten the exact same result, at least visually it would look exactly the same, but I wouldn't have this ability of painting back in the image. Does that make sense? So in other words, let's say, for example, I'm working along the edge of this blue toy truck, and I'm coming along here, and I accidentally take out too much, right? If I had used the eraser tool, then I'm basically toast. I'd have to undo, or I'd have to use my history, because this is all permanent if I had the eraser tool. Well, thankfully we're creating a mask, so I can just hit the X key on my keyboard and just fix up my errors and paint everything back in, or unmask, really, the areas that I had accidentally masked, right? That's really all there is to it. Now, you know, this is one method of initiating a layer mask. I'm going to show you another method here. What I'm going to have you do is revert your file back to the last time that we saved. We haven't saved yet, so it's going to take us all the way back to the beginning here. So I'm going to head up to my File menu and then all the way down to Revert, or of course F12 on your keyboard. And I'll show you another method for initiating a layer mask, and we'll do that next.